The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Inside, representatives from 1,000 different worlds sat in their designated seats, arranged in perfect circles that rose like steps toward the ceiling. The air buzzed with the sound of translation, devices working overtime to convert hundreds of different languages into something everyone could understand. At the center of it all stood the delegation from the Zephyrian Empire. Their blue-skinned leader, High Admiral Kithra, towered over most other beings in the room. Her 4 arms were crossed in a gesture that showed both authority and mild boredom. Behind her, a dozen other Zephyrian officers stood at attention, their metallic uniforms gleaming under the bright lights. The Empire controlled over 3,000 star systems. Their fleets could destroy entire worlds in a matter of hours. For the past 500 years, they had been the undisputed rulers of this section of the galaxy. Nothing happened in known space without their permission. That was about to change. A small group walked through the main entrance. They moved with purpose but without the grand ceremony that most species used when addressing the council. There were only 5 of them, and they looked remarkably ordinary. 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 head each. Their skin was a pale pink color, and they wore simple dark blue uniforms with no decorations or medals. The delegation from Earth requests permission to address the council, announced the session moderator, a tall insect-like being whose voice carried clearly through the chamber. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Earth was one of the newest additions to the galactic community. Their entire civilization controlled exactly 3 star systems. Their technology was at least 200 years behind the Empire's standards. Their largest warship was smaller than most Empire cargo vessels. High Admiral Kithra leaned forward in her seat with interest. It was unusual for such a minor species to request a formal address to the full council. Most primitive worlds sent simple trade requests or asked for protection from pirates. She wondered what these humans could possibly want. The lead human stepped forward. He was an older male with gray hair and calm eyes. His uniform bore no rank insignia, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. "I am Ambassador Chen Wei-Lin of the Terran Federation," he said, his voice clear and steady. "I come before this council today to deliver an official message from the government of Earth and all human colonies." He paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of different species. When he spoke again, his words were simple but carried the weight of absolute certainty. By unanimous vote of the Terran Senate, all Galactic Empire vessels are hereby banned from entering the Sol system and the surrounding 50 light-year exclusion zone. Any Empire ship that crosses this boundary will be considered an act of aggression against the Terran Federation. Silence fell over the chamber like a heavy blanket. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the gentle hum of the life support systems. Then High Admiral Kithra began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle, but quickly grew into full, hearty laughter. Soon other Zephyrian delegates joined in. The sound echoed through the chamber, and many other species began laughing as well. The idea was simply too ridiculous to take seriously. "You cannot be serious," Kithra said when she finally managed to control her laughter. "Your entire fleet consists of what? 50 ships? Maybe 100? We have individual battle groups larger than your entire military." Ambassador Chen remained perfectly calm. He did not seem embarrassed or angry at the laughter. If anything, he looked slightly sad. "We are completely serious, Admiral," he replied. "This is not a negotiation or a request. It is an official notification. Empire ships are not welcome in Terran space." "And what?" Kithra asked, rising to her full height. "Makes you think you could stop us if we chose to ignore this notification?" "We would prefer not to have to stop you," Chen said quietly. "That is why we are giving you this warning now in front of the entire council. We hope you will choose to respect our borders." "Respect?" Kithra's voice rose. "You dare speak of respect? Your species has been spacefaring for what, 200 years? We have been traveling between stars since before your world had developed written language. You have 3 tiny colonies. We rule half the galaxy. What could you possibly have that would make us respect your wishes?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. He looked around the chamber again, and several delegates noticed that his expression had grown more serious. "We have experience," he said finally. "Experience?" Kithra scoffed. "Experience in what? Building cargo haulers? Mining asteroids? Experience in things that are better left undisturbed, Chen replied. Admiral, I understand why you find our request amusing. From your perspective, we must seem like children playing at being adults. But there are things in this universe that are far more dangerous than any military fleet. Some of those things are very close to human space. The laughter in the chamber had died down. Many delegates were now listening with genuine curiosity. It was rare for such a small species to speak so confidently to the Empire. Are you threatening us? Kithara demanded. No, Chen said immediately. We are not threatening you. We are protecting you. Protecting us? Kithara's voice dripped with disbelief. From what? Chen was quiet again. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow everyone in the chamber could hear him clearly. From making the same mistakes we did. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. With the press of a button, a holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a star map with the Sol system clearly marked. Around it, in a perfect sphere, was a red boundary line. This exclusion zone is not about territory, Chen explained. It is not about resources or strategic advantage. It exists because there are some things that should not be disturbed. Some doors that should not be opened. Some questions that should not be asked. You speak in riddles, Kithara said, but her voice had lost some of its mocking tone. I speak in warnings, Chen corrected. The same warnings that other species tried to give us when we were younger and more foolish. We did not listen then. We learned too late that some knowledge comes with a price that is too high to pay. He deactivated the hologram and put the device back in his pocket. The Terran Federation has made its position clear, he continued. We ask that the Empire respect our borders. We hope that you will choose wisdom over curiosity, but if you do not, he paused and looked directly at High Admiral Kithara. If you do not, then you will discover why we guard our space so carefully. And once you know, you will never be allowed to leave. With that, Ambassador Chen bowed slightly to the council and turned to leave. His 4 companions followed without a word. The chamber remained silent until the humans had completely disappeared through the main doors. High Admiral Kithara stared at the empty space where the humans had stood. Around her, the council chamber buzzed with quiet conversations in a dozen different languages. But she was not listening to any of them. Instead, she was thinking about the human's final words. About the certainty in his voice when he spoke them. About the sadness in his eyes and about the fact that, for just a moment, she had actually believed him. But the moment passed. The Empire ruled the galaxy through strength, not by bowing to the demands of primitive species who spoke in riddles and made empty threats. High Admiral Kithara smiled coldly and began planning her response. 6 months had passed since the humans delivered their warning to the Galactic Council. High Admiral Kithara had spent most of that time preparing for this moment. She stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominator, watching the view screen as her small fleet moved through space toward the edge of human territory. 3 ships made up her reconnaissance force. Each one was a dreadnought-class vessel, capable of destroying entire cities with a single salvo. The Dominator alone carried enough firepower to level a planet's surface. Behind them flew the Crusher and the Void Render, equally powerful and equally deadly. All 3 ships were running full stealth mode. Their hulls were wrapped in cloaking fields that bent light around them, making them invisible to most sensors. Their engines ran silent, producing almost no heat signature. Advanced dampening fields hid their electromagnetic emissions. It was the most sophisticated stealth technology the Empire had ever developed. Distance to the human boundary? Kithara asked her navigation officer. 2 million kilometers and closing, Admiral, came the reply. At current speed, we will cross into their declared exclusion zone in 18 minutes. Kithara nodded. She had chosen this approach carefully. The human exclusion zone was a perfect sphere with a radius of 50 light-years, centered on their home system. But it was huge, and they could not possibly monitor every cubic meter of space within it. Her plan was simple. Slip in undetected, observe their defenses, and gather intelligence about their capabilities. The Empire needed to know what the humans were really hiding. Their behavior at the Council had been too confident, too certain. No species that weak should have been so willing to challenge the Empire unless they had something significant backing them up. Admiral, called out the sensor operator, we are detecting increased background radiation as we approach the boundary. Nothing dangerous, but it is unusual. What kind of radiation? Kithara asked. Unknown, ma'am. The computer cannot identify the source or type. It is like nothing in our databases, Kithara frowned. That was odd, but not necessarily alarming. Space was full of strange phenomena that science had not yet explained. She had more important things to worry about. Time to boundary. 5 minutes, Admiral. All stations report ready, Kithara ordered. Maintain stealth protocols. Full sensor sweep once we cross the line. I want to know everything about their defensive positions. Yes, Admiral. The fleet moved forward in perfect formation. On the view screen, space looked exactly the same as it had for the past several hours. Empty black dotted with distant stars. There was no visible sign that they were approaching anything significant. Boundary in 30 seconds, the navigator announced. All ships maintain position and speed, Kithara commanded. 10 seconds to boundary. 5 seconds. We have crossed into human space. Admiral. For a moment, nothing happened. The ships continued forward at the same speed. The sensors showed empty space ahead of them. Everything seemed normal. Then every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. Admiral, the sensor operator shouted over the noise. All sensors are offline. Navigation is failing. I am reading system malfunctions across all decks. Kithara gripped the arms of her command chair as the ship shuddered around her. The lights flickered and went out, leaving only the dim red glow of emergency power. Through the view screen, she could see the Crusher and Void Render tumbling out of formation, their engines dark. What is happening? She demanded. Unknown, Admiral. All primary systems are shutting down. Life support is cycling on and off. Weapons are completely offline. It is like something is interfering with our basic technology. A new voice filled the bridge. It came from the communication system, but the speaker should not have been working. The voice was calm, human, and spoke in perfect Zephyrian. Empire vessels, you have entered restricted space. You have 30 seconds to retreat before our automated defense systems engage. This is your only warning. Kithara stared at the dead communications panel in shock. Their own systems could not send or receive messages, but somehow the humans were broadcasting directly to them. How are they doing this? She asked her technical officer. I do not know, Admiral. According to our sensors, there are no human ships within 100,000 kilometers. We should be completely alone out here. But they detected us, Kithara said. They detected us through full stealth mode. That should be impossible, ma'am. The countdown was now at 15 seconds. Kithara felt sweat beating on her forehead despite the cold air on the bridge. The Empire's stealth technology was perfect. No known sensor system could penetrate it, yet somehow the humans had spotted them the moment they crossed the boundary. Can we retreat? She asked. Engines are not responding, Admiral. We are dead in space. 10 seconds. Kithara made a decision that went against everything she had been taught about Imperial superiority. Broadcast on all frequencies, she ordered. Tell them we surrender. Tell them we will leave immediately if they restore our systems. Admiral, the communications array is offline. Then fix it. 5 seconds. I cannot, Admiral. Nothing is responding. 3 seconds. Kithara watched the countdown reach 0 with a mixture of fear and fury. She had commanded fleets for over 40 years. She had conquered dozens of worlds. She had never retreated from a battle in her entire career. But she had also never faced an enemy that could disable her ships without firing a shot. The moment the countdown ended, something massive appeared on the view screen. It had not been there a second before. There had been no energy signature, no movement, no warning of any kind. One moment they were staring at empty space, and the next they were looking at something so large that their sensors could not measure its full size. It was clearly artificial, but it did not look like any ship or station in Imperial databases. The structure seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, but it maintained a basic geometric shape that hurt to look at directly. Parts of it appeared to exist in more than 3 dimensions, creating optical illusions that made Kithara's eyes water. Along its surface, thousands of weapon ports opened like eyes blinking awake. Each one glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to bend space around it. The energy readings were impossible. They showed power levels that should have required the output of an entire star. Admiral, the sensor operator whispered, I am reading energy signatures from that thing that are off our measurement scales. Whatever it is, it could destroy our entire fleet with a single shot. But the massive structure did not fire. Instead, the human voice returned just as calm as before. Empire vessels, you have seen what you were not meant to see. Your retreat is no longer possible. Prepare to be taken into custody. Custody? Kithara shouted at the communications panel. We are officers of the Galactic Empire. You cannot simply capture us. The voice replied with what sounded almost like sympathy. We are sorry, Admiral, but you chose to ignore our warning. You chose to cross the boundary. Now you must face the consequences of that choice. Beams of soft white light reached out from the massive structure and enveloped all 3 Imperial ships. Kythera felt a strange tingling sensation pass through her body. Around her, the bridge crew stood frozen in place, unable to move. "What are you doing to us?" she managed to ask. "We are bringing you somewhere safe," the voice replied. "Somewhere where you cannot accidentally cause harm to yourself or others. Do not be afraid, Admiral. You will understand everything soon." The last thing Kythera saw before losing consciousness was the impossible structure growing larger on the view screen as her ship was drawn toward it. Her final thought was a mixture of terror and confusion. The humans had not just defeated her fleet. They had captured it without firing a single shot. They had technology that made the Empire's most advanced weapons look like primitive tools, and somehow they had been expecting her. The question that haunted her as darkness closed in was simple but terrifying. If the humans had this kind of power, why were they hiding in a single star system? What could be so dangerous that beings with such advanced technology would choose to isolate themselves from the rest of the galaxy? And more importantly, what had she and her crew just stumbled into? The emergency session of the Imperial High Council convened 3 days after High Admiral Kythera's fleet disappeared. The massive war room on the capital world of Zephyr Prime hummed with tension as military leaders, scientists, and intelligence officers gathered around the central holographic display. Emperor Zaldanis himself presided over the meeting, his ancient features carved from stone and metal showing no emotion. At over 600 years old, he had ruled the Empire through countless crises. But the reports coming in from across the galaxy were unlike anything he had ever encountered. "Begin the briefing," he commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. General Vox, head of Imperial Intelligence, stepped forward. His forearms gestured at the holographic display, which showed a map of known space with hundreds of red markers scattered across it. "Your Majesty, what we have discovered defies explanation," Vox began. "After Admiral Kythera's fleet vanished, we initiated a galaxy-wide investigation into human activities. What we found suggests that everything we believed about this species was wrong." The display zoomed in on a red marker near the galactic rim. Observation Post 77 Alpha detected a human vessel 3 days ago, moving at impossible speeds. The ship appeared to cover 12 light-years in under 6 hours. "No known technology can achieve that velocity." Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. The fastest Imperial ships could barely manage 1 light-year per hour at maximum speed. "That is not all," Vox continued. "Deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy have recorded similar sightings. Human ships appearing and disappearing without using any detectable faster-than-light method. They seem to simply vanish from one location and appear in another." The Emperor leaned forward in his throne. "How many ships are we talking about?" "That is where it becomes truly disturbing, Your Majesty. Our best estimate is over 10,000 active human vessels operating throughout the galaxy. They have been moving freely through Empire space for decades, possibly centuries, without our knowledge." The display changed to show archaeological survey reports. Dr. Zarion, the Empire's chief xenoarchaeologist, took over the presentation. His insect-like features clicked nervously as he spoke. "Your Majesty, while investigating these ship sightings, we decided to review our archaeological databases for any historical mentions of humans. What we found challenges everything we know about galactic history. Images of ancient ruins appeared on the display. These structures were discovered on Kepler 442b, a world that has been abandoned for over 2 million years. Until last week, we believed they were built by an unknown precursor species. But detailed analysis of the architectural patterns and mathematical principles used in their construction shows clear similarities to human design philosophy." More images followed. Ruins on a dozen different worlds, all showing the same mysterious architectural style, all dating back millions of years. "This cannot be correct," interrupted Admiral Thrace, the Empire's chief military strategist. "Humans have only been spacefaring for 2 centuries. Their homeworld shows clear signs of recent technological development." Dr. Zarion's mandibles clicked rapidly. "That is what we believed as well, Admiral. But carbon dating does not lie. These ruins are ancient beyond measure, and they are clearly human in origin." The Emperor studied the images with growing unease. What are you suggesting, Doctor? I am suggesting that humans are not a young species at all, Your Majesty. I believe they are survivors of an ancient civilization that once dominated this galaxy. The primitive humans we encountered are actually the descendants of those who chose to remain behind when their civilization changed. Changed how? The Emperor demanded. Dr. Zarion was quiet for a moment. We found references in some of the older ruins, Your Majesty. Warnings carved in stone in languages that predate known writing systems. They speak of a great transformation, of a choice that had to be made, of guardians who would watch over something terrible. The display shifted again, showing long-range sensor data from the galactic core. Admiral Thrace stepped forward, his expression grim. Your Majesty, while Dr. Zarion was analyzing archaeological data, we conducted a comprehensive survey of human space using our most advanced long-range sensors. What we discovered is unsettling. The image showed the galactic core, but it was not the familiar spiral of stars and nebulae that should have been there. Instead, massive geometric structures were visible throughout the region, structures that dwarfed entire star systems. These installations spanned thousands of light years, Admiral Thrace explained. They appeared to be connected by some kind of energy network that we cannot begin to understand. All of them are emitting human energy signatures. How is this possible? Demanded General Mordak, the head of Imperial Engineering Corps. We have detailed surveys of the galactic core going back 500 years. These structures were never there before. Actually, sir, they were, replied the chief sensor technician nervously. We reviewed our historical data and found evidence of these structures in every survey we have ever conducted. But somehow our computers always classified them as natural phenomena, pulsars, nebulae, asteroid fields. It was as if something was preventing us from seeing them for what they really were. The Emperor rose from his throne, his massive form towering over the assembled officers. You're telling me that humans have been hiding installations throughout the galaxy for millions of years? That they have technology capable of fooling our sensors on a galactic scale? That they have ships that can travel faster than anything we have ever built? Yes, Your Majesty. General Vox replied quietly. Then why? The Emperor asked, his voice dangerous. Are they hiding in a single star system? If they have this kind of power, why have they not conquered the galaxy? Why allow us to believe we are the dominant species? The question hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Nobody had an answer that made sense. Finally, Dr. Zarion spoke up again. Your Majesty, I believe I may know why. The ancient texts we found, they do not speak of conquest or expansion. They speak of containment. Of guardians who gave up everything to watch over something that must never be allowed to escape. Escape from where? The Emperor asked. Dr. Zarion activated a new display showing the Sol system. From there, Your Majesty. From the system, they have declared off-limits to all other species, the same system where Admiral Kithra's fleet disappeared. The Emperor stared at the innocent-looking star system on the display. From this distance, it appeared completely normal. A single yellow star with a handful of planets orbiting around it. Nothing to suggest it contained anything more dangerous than the primitive human colony they had all believed lived there, but now he was beginning to understand that nothing about the humans was what it seemed. Your Majesty, Admiral Thrace said carefully, there is one more thing. Our analysis of Admiral Kithera's final transmission suggests that her ships encountered defensive technology that operates on principles we do not understand. The energy readings we detected during her capture indicate that the humans may have access to weapons that manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. What do you recommend? The Emperor asked. The room fell silent. Finally, General Vox spoke. Your Majesty, I recommend that we heed the human warning. Whatever they are protecting in their space, it has made them powerful enough to hide their true nature from us for centuries. Perhaps it is better to leave them alone. But the Emperor's eyes were fixed on the display showing the Sol system. He had not built the greatest empire in galactic history by backing down from challenges. The humans had embarrassed him in front of the entire Galactic Council. They had captured one of his fleets. They had made him look weak. And now he was learning that they had been deceiving everyone for millions of years. No, he said finally, I will not be intimidated by a species of liars and hide-behinds. If they have this much power, then that power belongs to the Empire. We will take their system, capture their technology, and learn their secrets. Your Majesty, Dr. Zarion pleaded, The ancient warnings specifically state that some things are too dangerous to— Enough, the Emperor roared. I have heard enough warnings and riddles and archaeological theories. The humans have made fools of us all, but that ends now. Admiral Thrace, prepare the Grand Fleet. We march on the Sol system within the week. As the officers filed out to begin preparations, none of them noticed the small device hidden in the corner of the war room. A device that had been recording everything they said. A device that was already transmitting their plans across the galaxy to a small, unremarkable star system 50,000 light-years away. In that system, beings who had once been human received the transmission and began preparing for the war they had hoped would never come, but they had been preparing for it for millions of years just in case. The Emperor wanted to learn their secrets. Soon he would discover that some secrets came with a price too terrible to pay. The Imperial Grand Fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 500 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a planet. 2,000 heavy cruisers bristling with weapons that could crack moons in half. 10,000 support vessels carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Emperor Zaldanis stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the massive fleet arrange itself into battle formation. This was the combined might of 3,000 star systems. The accumulated military power of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known should have been enough to conquer anything. All vessels report ready for hyperspace jump, announced Admiral Thrace from his position at the tactical station. Destination, Sol System, Terran space. Begin the assault, Emperor Zaldanis commanded. Space twisted around the massive fleet as they entered hyperspace. The journey to human space would take 12 hours at maximum speed. The Emperor spent that time reviewing the battle plans one final time. They would drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system and demand immediate surrender. If the humans refused, they would systematically destroy every defensive position until the humans had no choice but to submit. It was a simple plan. It should have worked. 12 hours later, the Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the coordinates of the Sol system. What they found waiting for them defied all logic and reason. The human fleet was already there. Not just a few ships. Not even a few hundred ships. Thousands of vessels hung in perfect formation around the outer planets of the system. But these were not the primitive cargo haulers and patrol boats that Imperial intelligence had reported. These were something else entirely. Admiral, the sensor operator called out, his voice shaking. I am reading energy signatures from the human fleet that are impossible. The computer cannot process the data. It keeps showing error messages. Emperor Zaldanis stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The human ships did not look like ships at all. They appeared to shift and flow like living things, their hulls seeming to exist in more dimensions than the eye could properly see. Weapons that hurt to look at directly protruded from their surfaces at impossible angles. How many ships? He demanded. I cannot get an accurate count, Your Majesty. The sensors keep showing different numbers. Sometimes it shows 3,000 human vessels, sometimes 30,000. It is as if they exist in multiple states simultaneously. That is impossible, Admiral Thrace insisted. Ships cannot exist in quantum superposition. A new voice filled the bridge. It was the same calm human voice that had spoken to Admiral Cathera months earlier. Emperor Zaldanis, you have ignored our warnings. You have violated our space. You have seen what you were not meant to see. There is no longer any way for this to end peacefully. The Emperor stepped forward, his massive form radiating authority. I am the ruler of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences. We are sorry, Emperor, but you do not understand what you are dealing with. You cannot conquer us. You cannot threaten us. You can only choose whether to retreat now or be taken into protective custody like Admiral Kithera's fleet. I have 500 dreadnoughts, the Emperor roared. I command the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The human voice was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, it sounded infinitely sad. Emperor, what you see as the most powerful military force in the galaxy is barely a minor inconvenience to us. We have been holding back for millennia, pretending to be weak, hoping that other species would leave us alone. But you have forced our hand. Prove it, the Emperor snarled. Very well. The human ships began to change. What had appeared to be strange but recognizable vessels suddenly unfolded like flowers blooming in fast forward. Their hulls expanded in directions that should not have existed, revealing internal structures that seemed to contain entire pocket dimensions. Weapons emerged that appeared to be made of crystallized space-time itself. The Imperial sensors went completely insane. Every alarm on every ship began screaming at once. The energy readings climbed beyond anything that should have been possible, then kept climbing. "Emperor," Admiral Thrace called out, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "Our shields are failing just from proximity to their energy fields. They have not even fired yet, and our defensive systems are shutting down." "Then we fire first," the Emperor commanded. "All ships open fire." The Grand Fleet unleashed everything it had. 500 dreadnoughts fired their primary weapons simultaneously. The combined energy output was enough to ignite a small star. Plasma beams, antimatter torpedoes, and quantum disruptors filled space with deadly light. None of it reached the human ships. The weapons simply stopped in mid-flight, as if they had encountered an invisible wall. The energy beams scattered harmlessly in all directions. The torpedoes froze in space like insects trapped in amber. The disruptors fizzled out as if the very laws of physics had decided to ignore them. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Thrace. "Not impossible," the human voice corrected gently. "Just operating on principles you do not yet understand. Emperor, your weapons work by manipulating matter and energy within the standard physical framework. Our defenses operate by temporarily rewriting that framework. Your attacks are not blocked. They simply cease to be relevant." The Emperor stared at the tactical display in shock. His most powerful weapons had been rendered completely useless without the humans even appearing to try. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We are what humanity became when we discovered something that should never have been discovered," the voice replied. "We are the guardians of a secret so terrible that we transformed our entire civilization to contain it. We gave up our bodies, our freedom, our right to explore the galaxy. We became something beyond organic life because only something beyond organic life could hope to keep the universe safe." "Safe from what?" the Emperor demanded. "From the thing we found sleeping in the heart of our system," the voice said. "The thing that you are about to wake up with your presence here." As if summoned by those words, space around the Sol system began to change. The stars seemed to flicker and shift. Reality itself appeared to be developing cracks like glass under pressure. "No," the human voice said, now filled with urgency. "Emperor, you must retreat immediately. Your aggressive thoughts, your hostile intentions, they are disturbing the containment field. If you wake it up, wake what up?" The Emperor shouted. He never received an answer. Something vast and malevolent stirred in the depths of space near the sun. It was not visible to sensors or cameras, but every living being in the system could feel its presence like ice water flowing through their veins. The human ships immediately shifted into a new formation, one clearly designed for defense rather than attack. Energy barriers sprang up around the inner system. Weapons that operated on principles beyond Imperial understanding began charging for battle. "All Imperial vessels," the human voice broadcast on all frequencies, "you're now designated as potential infection vectors. You have been exposed to entities that exist outside normal reality. You cannot be allowed to leave this system. Prepare to be taken into protective custody." "You cannot hold us," the Emperor protested. "We are the Galactic Empire." "Emperor," the voice replied, now speaking directly to him. "You wanted to know our secrets. You wanted to understand why we guard this system so carefully. Congratulations. You are about to learn." Beams of impossible light reached out from the human fleet and began enveloping Imperial ships one by one. The beams passed through shields and armor as if they were not there, but they did not destroy. Instead, they simply made the ships disappear from normal space. "Where are you taking us?" the Emperor demanded as his own ship was caught in one of the beams. "Somewhere safe," the human voice replied. "Somewhere where you cannot accidentally spread the contamination to the rest of the galaxy. Somewhere where you can learn why some warnings should be heeded." As the Eternal Dominion was pulled through dimensions that human science had learned to navigate eons ago, Emperor Zaldanis had one final terrifying realization. The humans had not been hiding because they were weak. They had been hiding because they were far too powerful. And now, because of his arrogance and pride, something ancient and evil was beginning to wake up in the darkness between the stars. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was one of the human guardians materializing on his bridge. It had once been human, but now it was something else. Something that existed partially outside normal space and time. Something that had given up its humanity to protect the universe from a threat beyond comprehension. "Welcome to the Vigil, Emperor," it said in a voice like distant thunder. "We hope you are prepared for what comes next." Emperor Zaldanus woke up in a place that should not have existed. He was standing in what appeared to be a vast observation deck, with walls made of transparent metal. Through them he could see space, but it was wrong. Stars moved in patterns that hurt his mind to follow. Nebulae shifted colors that had no names, and in the distance, structures so massive they made entire solar systems look like toys drifted slowly through the cosmic darkness. "You are awake," said a familiar voice behind him. The Emperor turned to see Ambassador Chen Wei-Lin walking toward him. But this was not the same human who had addressed the Galactic Council. This Chen was taller, his features sharper, and his eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. When he moved, reality rippled slightly around him. "Where am I?" the Emperor demanded. "You're in a containment facility that exists partially outside normal space-time," Chen replied calmly. "Think of it as a waiting room between dimensions. You are safe here, as is the rest of the galaxy." The Emperor looked around and saw other figures standing or sitting throughout the vast space. He recognized some of them. Admiral Cathera was there, along with her surviving crew members. But there were others as well, beings from dozens of different species, all wearing the expressions of people who had learned something terrible. "How long have they been here?" he asked. "Some for centuries," Chen said. "Others for millennia. All of them made the same choice you did. All of them ignored our warnings and crossed into Terran space seeking knowledge or conquest. All of them discovered truths that made it impossible for them to ever return to their old lives." "You cannot hold us here forever," the Emperor said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. "We are not holding you," Chen replied. "You are holding yourselves. Once you know what we know, once you see what we guard, leaving becomes impossible. Not because we will stop you, but because you will understand that leaving would doom everything you have ever cared about." Chen gestured toward the transparent walls. "Do you see those structures out there? Those installations that span thousands of light years? They are not weapons or ships or colonies. They are locks, seals, barriers designed to contain something that exists beyond the normal boundaries of reality." "Contain what?" the Emperor asked, though part of him no longer wanted to know the answer. "Something we found when humanity first began exploring the outer reaches of our solar system," Chen said. "Something that had been sleeping in the cold darkness between dimensions, using our sun as an anchor point to maintain its tenuous connection to this reality." The view through the walls shifted, showing the Sol system from a perspective that revealed hidden structures wrapped around every planet, every moon, every asteroid. The entire system had been transformed into a massive containment device. "We called it the Unmaker," Chen continued, "not because it destroys things, but because it unravels the very concept of existence. Where it touches reality, causality breaks down. The laws of physics become suggestions. Time flows backward. Space folds in on itself. Entire universes can be undone with a single careless thought." Emperor Zaldanus felt a chill run through his body. "You are lying. Nothing like that could exist." "I wish I were lying," Chen said sadly. "Humanity discovered it by accident 3 million years ago, when we were still a young and curious species, much like your empire today. We wanted to explore everything, understand everything, conquer everything. We found something in the darkness beyond Neptune that should never have been found." The view changed again, showing ancient Earth. But this was not the primitive world that imperial records described. This Earth was surrounded by massive cities that floated in space, connected by bridges of crystallized energy. Ships the size of moons moved between the planets. This was humanity at its peak, Chen explained. We had conquered death, mastered the fundamental forces of the universe, built an empire that spanned multiple dimensions. We thought we were gods, and then we woke up something that showed us how wrong we were. "What happened?" the Emperor asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "The Unmaker stirred in its sleep," Chen said. "Just a slight movement, barely noticeable. But that tiny motion was enough to unravel 17 star systems instantly. Billions of humans ceased to exist not just in present time, but retroactively. They had never been born. They had never existed. The very memory of them was erased from reality." The Emperor stared at the images in horror. "How did you stop it?" "We did not stop it," Chen replied. "We made a choice. The greatest minds of our species came together and developed a plan. We would transform ourselves into something beyond organic life, something that could exist partially outside normal reality. We would become eternal guardians watching over the Unmaker forever, to ensure it never fully awakened. But why hide from the rest of the galaxy? Why pretend to be primitive? Chen turned to look directly at the Emperor. Because knowledge of the Unmaker is itself dangerous. The more complex a mind becomes, the more likely it is to accidentally wake the entity through curious thought patterns. Every time someone learns about it, every time someone investigates it, the containment field weakens slightly. That is why you banned us from your space, the Emperor said, understanding beginning to dawn. Yes. We hoped that other species would develop, explore, grow, and eventually transcend to higher planes of existence without ever discovering what lurks in the darkness of our system. We wanted them to live full lives without the burden of eternal guardianship. But we would not listen, the Emperor said bitterly. No, and now the containment field has been damaged by your fleet's hostile intentions and aggressive thoughts. The Unmaker has begun to stir again. Reality is already becoming unstable in several nearby star systems. As if to emphasize his point, the view through the walls showed distant stars winking out of existence, leaving behind holes in space that hurt to look at. Can it be repaired? The Emperor asked. Yes, Chen said, but only by beings who understand the true nature of the threat. Only by those who are willing to give up everything to maintain the vigil. Chen gestured around the vast space. Everyone here has been given the same choice that I am about to offer you. You can have your memory of these events erased and be returned to your empire with a fabricated explanation for your fleet's disappearance. You will live out your natural life believing that humanity is just another primitive species. You will never know the truth. Or, the Emperor asked, or you can choose to join the vigil. Your consciousness will be preserved and enhanced, but your body will be transformed into something capable of existing across multiple dimensions. You will become a guardian, helping to maintain the barriers that keep the universe safe. You will never again be able to return to your old life, but you will serve a purpose greater than any empire. The Emperor looked around at the other beings in the space. How many have chosen to stay? All of them, Chen replied. Once someone truly understands what is at stake, the choice becomes obvious. Personal desires, political ambitions, even the fate of individual species become insignificant compared to the survival of reality itself. Emperor Zaldanis stood silent for a long time, staring out at the impossible structures that held back cosmic oblivion. He had spent his entire life building an empire, conquering worlds, accumulating power. He had believed that strength and dominance were the most important things in the universe. Now, he understood that the most important thing was something he had never even considered, making sure the universe continued to exist. If I choose to stay, he asked finally, what happens to my empire? It will continue, Chen said. Your people will believe you died in a tragic accident during a peaceful exploration mission. They will mourn you and choose a new emperor. Life will go on, but the galaxy will be a little safer because you will be here, helping to maintain the vigil. The Emperor thought about his empire, his people, his legacy. Then he thought about the things sleeping in the darkness and what would happen to everything he cared about if it ever fully awakened. I will stay, he said. Chen nodded sadly. Welcome to the vigil, Emperor. Welcome to the burden that humanity has carried for 3 million years. Welcome to the most important job in the universe, making sure tomorrow still exists. As the transformation began, Emperor Zaldanis felt his consciousness expanding beyond the limits of organic thought. He could suddenly perceive dimensions that had no names, understand mathematics that existed beyond normal logic, and see the vast network of guardians that stretched across the galaxy. And at the center of it all, in the cold darkness between the stars, something ancient and terrible shifted slightly in its sleep. But the barriers held. The seals remained intact. Reality continued to exist. The vigil continued as it had for millions of years, as it would for millions more. In the depths of space, new guardians took their places alongside old ones, all of them united in a single purpose, protecting a universe that would never know how close it came to not existing at all. And somewhere in the galaxy, young civilizations continued to grow and explore and dream, never knowing that their freedom to do so was bought and paid for by beings who had given up everything to stand watch in the darkness. The galaxy was safe. The warning had been given. The choice had been made. The vigil would continue,